See how quickly I can possibly make a video to show you some ideas about doing the presentation. First of all, I made this sheet that just has a whole bunch of possible ideas for the presentation, but I also suggest that you do a 10-minute quick run through of the library databases to see if you can find some sources within the USC Upstate Library. And these particular sites are good ones to check out. But when you use the Search Up app at the library, you can usually find things pretty effectively. So, for example, and kind of with, tongue in cheek, kind of joking and being ironic, let's say I want to do a presentation on the possibility of good white people. And this takes a super long time. I won't waste time, but I'm just going to put in Search Up that crazy term, good white people. So actually, there's a book called Good White People, and there are a few articles, but I checked this one out and it was about Australia, so I didn't think it was relevant. And this book I thought was really quite good, and I've read this book before. So I looked into those a little bit and I put them in my works cited. Now, another thing that I knew about from my, just generally stuff that I know about.com is a website that is a spoof. It's a joke. It's not a legitimate website, but the people do it to make some points about race and particularly about the idea of good white people. So let me show you that really quickly. This is my work cited for the presentation. Library source, and then this website. And keep in mind, they are making fun of white people who try too hard to be, quote, good white people. In this website, nobody knows exactly who made it, but it's been around for at least 20 years, possibly a little bit longer. And essentially what it does is it makes fun of these people who call themselves Sally and Johnny, who claim to have black friends, and all of the things that their black friends list here in the testimonials that Sally and Johnny do to ingratiate themselves or to be friends or to be so-called good white people are microaggressions. For example, this gentleman right over here says, Johnny is generous enough to remark upon how articulate I am. That makes me feel good. And obviously, that's a microaggression. That's a way of saying, wow, you speak well. I expected you not to be able to talk, because all kinds of racist possible reasons people say things like that. So that is the website that I would hope to use. And in the presentation, you should use a website and you should have some visuals and you should have, about 2 library sources. So in this question of good white people, we discussed it a little bit today in the face-to-face class. We thought about also someone called Rachel Dolezal. And I've done presentations and talked about Rachel Dolezal before because it wasn't enough for Rachel Dolezal to be a good white person. She actually decided that she was black, and she's not. So I have this blog post that I know about because I wrote it about Rachel Dolezal, and about what's up with people who act that way. Well, I had a little bit of confusion and I think desire to identify with Africa when I was in my early 20s, and then I realized that you don't get to choose any racial category you want. That is something that people do in privilege, so I wrote this blog. And I also made a presentation using Blendspace that's connected to the blog, and it's about what is the idea of the good white people, of people, so as we say, loving across the colored line. This is the couple that was in the Supreme Court case Loving versus Virginia, or Loving v. Virginia, in 1967. Actually, Loving v. Virginia is against a 1924 Racial Integrity Act, and there's also a movie about it now that you might have seen. The idea, though, of the difference between black and white is something that's very significant in African American studies. So if this was a presentation in which I wanted to identify how my presentation applies to African American studies, it doesn't apply that well because I've chosen this strange topic, but at the same time, I'm looking at key terms and ideas in African American studies, such as the question of the color line, which is a term that W.E.B. Du Bois coined. And then I just have some images. This is Rachel Dolezal. She's wearing this beautiful wig or weave. She does all kinds of interesting things to her hair. And by interesting, I mean cultural appropriation. And these are her sons who, according to from people who've seen the Netflix documentary, are pretty embarrassed that their mom insists she's black. Then this is just some points I wanted to make about Rachel Dolezal. She's not black. She's not African American. But, what is a race and how do I know? Even though white people can't be black, I think white people need to understand that we don't need African American culture or even classes in it. And third, to learn to love across the color line, the many color lines in this world, we have to recognize and respect one another as truly equal. Or as James Cone says, we have to have hope. Or as Malcolm X says, we have to truly understand that we are human beings with human rights, not only within this nation, but throughout the world. And this is a Rachel Dolezal video I won't subject you to right now. Now, this gentleman, Kevin Young, who is a poet, wrote a critical article about Rachel Dolezal that I summarized in my blog. And in one of his poems, he has this wonderful line, "Blackness is the face in the mirror, a not bad-looking one, that for no reason at all some people uglify or hate on, or wish ill to." So, nonetheless, even though white people have historically uglified and hated on blackness, there is a long-standing tradition of white people wearing blackface. And maybe my image here isn't working as it's supposed to, just going super slow. But it was a way to promote racist ideas. White people would use a cork in the 1800s to make their face look darker. And this is the source of many stereotypes about African Americans. It actually plays and shows that white people did to make fun of black people. It's not, even based on anything that African Americans did. This is from another series in which a white man goes to the barber, a black man goes to the barber and has his face painted white. This is an image of Jim Crow, who was a figure, person, often a white person in blackface, who encouraged these racial stereotypes. This is another white person in blackface. As you can see, it's pretty hideous. And this is just an activity or a set of questions that would follow up with this discussion. So Kevin Young tells us blackness is not skin tone only, and wigs, which is kind of a funny term. This is W.B. Du Bois talking about what is a race. And this is James Baldwin talking about our combined responsibility to be good citizens and good people regardless of our race or nation or ethnic background. So hopefully this gives you a little better idea about how the presentations might pan out. I'm going to shorten this for now because I went way too long, and this would be even too long probably for a presentation. But let me know if you have questions, and have a great day.